In the church world, we hear messages about change and transformation quite often, but for many of us, the question still remains, how can I really change? Stephen Smith, co-founder of Potter's Inn, a ministry that's devoted to leaders in the marketplace and ministry, has unlocked a number of powerful principles for transformation through exploring the life and legacy of Lazarus' story. And it's good to have you with us today, Stephen.
Thank you,
That is a serious question. You know, we hear about transformation, we hear about spiritual change and God working from the inside out, but you know, going from day to day and month to month, we think, am I changing? How can I really change?
Yeah, I think people in our churches, they're packed every Sunday asking this question. They've been struggling with promises to change, promises to quit doing something, to start doing something, but the pews and the churches are filled with broken promises where we've overpromised, but we've under-delivered. And I found in the story of Lazarus a very easy, visual, high sensory story that we can enter. And the power of a story seems to really communicate so much more than a great big book with thick charts and PowerPoint presentations. The story of Lazarus is one of the most incredible stories. It's been known for 2,000 years, but most of the time we hear it at the graveside.
Right, at funeral.
The pastor says those famous words of Jesus, I am the resurrection and the life. But that story was meant for the living, not for the dead, for you and me.
And so when did this happen that you kind of had the aha moment with the story of Lazarus and you saw some of these powerful truths kind of unlocked?
Yeah, well, like all of us, I've known the story of Lazarus all my adult life. But it wasn't until I was flipping through an art book that I noticed that artists throughout the ages, throughout the history of the church, have capitalized on that story. Primitive artists in the catacombs of Rome, for instance, there's 60 different versions of this painting. Italian Renaissance painters, Van Gogh, the Dutch painter, painted that story. The last painting he died in, he put his face as the face of Lazarus, somebody that had really experienced life. And I think that's what we want. I think the churches are filled so much with people that are more dead than alive, more tired than energized, more surviving than thriving. And Lazarus has so many answers for the modern day Christian.
So how can the story of Lazarus help us make that transformation? Because for me, one of the things I don't like about it, I'm like, he let him die. You know? Why did he do that when he could have came earlier?
It's a big problem, and we just heard the clips of this horrible tornado in Iowa.
Why?
I can imagine those people, Jesus, where were you?
Right.
That's the question so many of us ask in our life, and it's the question that I deal with in the book called the lingering Jesus. Why did Jesus linger? Why did he stay away? Why didn't he go and help his friend? And that's the question Mary and Martha posed to Jesus twice in John 11. If you were here, this wouldn't have happened. And I would think the Chinese Christians would be asking that same question. This earthquake wouldn't have happened. The people in Myanmar, the people in Iowa, the people in the World Trade Center. The lingering Jesus is a question that we really need to deal with in our life. You know, last night when I flew in here to South Bend, I took a 2-mile walk just to get some fresh air and enjoy the beautiful city here of South Bend. It takes 40 minutes to walk 2 miles. And to think that Jesus wouldn't have walked 40 minutes to go and help his friend. It seems the Christian thing to do, but something happens to us, Stephan, when we wait. And it's in that waiting process that I unpackage in the book that transformation, true change happens. We can't rush it. We can't rush that process. We want to be able to, but when we wait before the Lord, deep change in our DNA happens.
And you also bring out the obvious, but then really bring out the unobvious in the fact that transformation can get stinky and smelly and messy and ugly, and that's when real transformation happens. It's not a neat process.
Yeah. A friend of mine, Robert, that I've been working with, has a deep addiction to internet pornography, and that's a smelly addiction. Workaholism is a smelly addiction for a wife or a child at home, and their husband's never home to take the child out on a bike ride or to go take them to McDonald's for a milkshake. Transformation really is a stinky process. And in the book, there's a painting that I refer to by Giotto, an Italian Renaissance, where he painted the women who were outside the tomb holding their veils up over their nose because they couldn't stand the stench. And this is the problem, I think, that we have in our 21st century church is when we want to really change, when a man wants to change from having an adulterous affair, that's a stinky problem. Sometimes we want to have Pine Sol Christianity or go get some Purell and
antiseptic
and clean. But transformation really is a stinky process. And Lazarus shows us that he comes out of that tomb all wrapped up in a mummy. He's not dancing and running and leaping for joy. He's wrapped up in grave clothes. And I think we wear grave clothes when we come to church, when we're in our small groups. And these are the things that Jesus says we need to be free from.
Right.
The things that really bind us and hinder us from having that resurrected life.
So then how does somebody go about getting free? Because with Lazarus, Jesus called him forth. He didn't really have to do anything, and then someone else took the grave clothes off, right?
That's the whole point, Kelly, because what happened in the story, as Jesus said it, Lazarus was coming out of the tomb. Jesus could have, with the power of God, could have exploded those grave clothes. They could have disintegrated. But no, he came out just as you and I come out with all these issues. But there in John, and as John tells this incredible story, Jesus says, tell them to take the grave clothes off. And Stephan, we're looking for hands, like your hands on my grave clothes. Kelly, your hands on my grave clothes. My hands on your grave clothes. Let me take that off, that grave cloth of fear or that grave cloth of anger. We need each other. And to truly be transformed, we can't do it
ourselves
as the Lone Ranger. This is the beauty of this beautiful story, that it took all the people around Lazarus to really set him free.
And so there's a beauty to that, but there's also a big challenge because we want to get our own grave. We want to take care of our own issues and our own baggage and our own stink and get ourselves better, and then we'll be okay.
Right.
But there's a vulnerability and there's really an exposure that we really need to be able to connect with someone else. How do you recommend that we do that? You know, because you don't just walk in church on Sunday morning, throw your hands up and say, here's my big, massive, ugly problem.
That's right.
Let's all deal with it.
That's right. I think it takes safety. Lazarus had to come out of that grave, the tomb where Jesus called him forth. People reached out. In this beautiful painting by Giotto, there's one hand reaching for that grave cloth. And I think all our life, we're just looking for that one hand. It doesn't have to be 50. It doesn't have to be 25. But when we see this beautiful story, and in the painting by Giotto that's in the book, you see this one hand reaching, and it means just a safe person that's not going to rip it off. But if you're struggling with some addiction, some closet issue that no one knows, it takes feeling safe. It means being vulnerable, building trust. And in the book, we talk about this in one of the chapters of building a transformational community, which is what we really need. We don't need another Bible study. We don't need another seminar to go to. We need a community that is truly transformational, that we can truly experience change.
Do you think the transformation process is voluntary, or do you think God ever kind of pushes us or forces us to go through it?
That's a great question. I think it's both. I think the name of our ministry that my wife and I founded is called The Potter's Inn, and I noticed your beautiful pottery that you have around here. That when that clay is on that potter's wheel, it's involuntary. It's on that potter's wheel, and that wheel begins to whirl and change, and then those hands come and form that clay. I think the people in Iowa, this tornado, the people in China, that's involuntary on their part. They didn't ask for this, but God's going to use that in their heart to bring about true transformation, to show them their need to cry out to God, not to a government, but to God.
For someone watching right now that you know, is very much in tune and resonating with what you're saying here, and the message of transformation, the message of Jesus being the resurrection of life, of being loosed of the grave clothes, what is the first step? What is really the first step? You talk about God awareness, self-awareness. Is that kind of the beginning?
Yeah, I think John Calvin is the great reformer of the church. In his book, The Institute, says that the way we know God is to know ourselves, and the way we know ourselves is to know God. It's a double road that we have to go down.